There are fresh calls for the U.S. Secretary of State to declare the Myanmar military campaign on Rohingya Muslims a genocide. Lawmakers from the American Senate have criticized Mike Pompeo for failing to use the word in a report on the crisis. Thousands of Rohingya died and some 700,000 fled to neighboring Bangladesh after last year's military campaign. For more on this story, we're now joined in the studio by Monica Pina. Thank you very much, Monica, for joining us this morning. You've been to the camps in Bangladesh for 2 years in a row now. Has there been any change in the plight, in the situation of these refugees?
Yes, for sure. Good morning. The situation has stabilized. We can say that 1 year down the line, where we saw this massive influx of Rohingya refugees, it was the biggest in their history, in the history of this Muslim minority of Myanmar. And the dynamics have changed, so the situation is more stable. Still, we are looking at 1 million Rohingyas living in very crowded camps. The humanitarian agencies have managed to guarantee basic needs, but Rohingyas are still lacking basic rights. Like, for example, in Bangladesh, they don't have a refugee status. So, as you said, I've just come back from Bangladesh, from southern Bangladesh. I went to several refugee camps. I suggest we have a look at my report from Unchiprang.
Unchiprang is a makeshift camp for over 23,000 Rohingyas in Teknaf, southern Bangladesh. Last year, it didn't exist. Today, around 1 million Rohingyas live in similar settlements, official camps or mixed with the host community.
1 year has passed since 720,000 Rohingyas were forced to flee into Bangladesh following a military crackdown in Myanmar. We came back to Bangladesh to follow up on their living conditions in one of the poorest countries in the world.
Last year's exodus was not the first for Myanmar's Muslim minority, but it was by far the biggest. They fled violent repression that the UN recently stated could amount to genocide. No one really knows how many Rohingyas died. Over 24,000 according to the latest independent report by international researchers. But Myanmar's authorities ban anyone from investigating in Rakhine State, the Rohingyas' home for generations.
I come from Tula Toli. I saw soldiers killing people, throwing them in a pond, and raping women. This is why I left.
Are they all from
Refugees like this man have found a peaceful environment and basic assistance in Bangladesh, but they are living in overcrowded camps, hastily built to cope with the world's fastest-growing refugee crisis. The EU, among the main donors here, warns that the attention of the international community needs to stay high.
Refugees have access to water, to shelter, have access to food. Yet they're in need of protection, they're in need of livelihood opportunities. They remain stateless and without a legal status in this country. That means they're unable to move freely in between the camps. They cannot work and they are not entitled to receive proper education.
Just walking around the camp shows how much has been done, though it's evident how hard it is to deal with a crisis that is likely to last. Water and sanitation are among the main challenges. The French NGO Solidarités International is a specialist in tackling problems caused by contaminated water.
There are no diseases outbreak, so far things are under control, and this way we contribute to a better public health environment. Now we are thinking about the resilience of the infrastructure. So we are working to make it sustainable in the medium term and then to cope with the continuous stay of the refugees in the region.
Bangladesh has urged the global community to increase pressure on Myanmar to ensure the repatriation of Rohingyas, but the Muslims of Myanmar refuse to return without guarantees.
We are seeking justice for the genocide we are suffering. We want Myanmar's government to recognize us as citizens, otherwise we won't go back. We don't want to stay in these shelters made of tarpaulins. We are seeking recognition.
They didn't have rights in their country. They don't have rights in this country. This is the world's fastest growing refugee crisis, as you described there. And when these people cross the border, they come with horrific stories. Why do you think that the international community has been so reluctant to name this military campaign against this Muslim minority a genocide?
Because the word genocide is perceived as one of the most serious crimes. And also, for example, in Rwanda in 1994, the members of the Clinton administration were really reluctant and very careful in using this word, but then we know what happened there. And for Myanmar is happening exactly the same, because this would mean that afterwards they would have to take measures against what's happening. And everybody agrees that the best long-term solution has to come from Myanmar, and it's political.